Perfect. Awesome. Is everybody able to see the chat?
I'm not, but I'm on my cell phone, so I don't know.
In the chat, Rhonda, if you're on your cell phone, I'm not sure if you may be able to see it just yet, but when you get off, like when the call is over, you'll be able to see it for sure. But last night and this morning, I went ahead and uploaded my purchase and sell agreements into the chat, along with my joint venture agreements as well. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to go into these agreements and essentially break it all down. I kind of did it this morning, and I included a PDF breakdown for both agreements in the chats as well. So that everything that we go over in this video is also going to be literally on a PDF too. So pretty short and sweet for the most part. And then secondly, if y'all hear road noise, I'm so sorry. I'm in the garage this morning. And it was a little dark in here, so I had to let the light up, or not the let the light up, but the garage door up to get some light in. So I do apologize for that. But let's go ahead and dive into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's do entire screen. Cool beans. And share. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and open this little guy up here. If it decides to open up, that'd be great. There we go. Okay, does everybody see this? Cool.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is the PDF of the breakdown for the agreement, and it goes all the way down to the very, very bottom. However, there's also a Word doc in here too that is editable. You can edit the document. You can't eat it, but you can edit it. I mean, you probably could eat it. I just want to recommend it. So let's go ahead and dive into it, break it all down together, and answer any questions y'all may have. Okay, so at the very beginning, in very big bold letters, you've got a statement that says this is a legally binding agreement, because it is. At the very beginning, that sounds so funny. At the very beginning here, you've got the agreement of both parties. So in this case, it's going to be, the date will go here. So in this March 16, 2024, you've got the seller's name here, and then you've got the buyer. Now this clause right here, and blank or assigns, makes this contract assignable. There's another clause later on, further down on the second or third page, that also states that this is an assignable agreement as well. So no matter what, this agreement is assignable, and that's really important, especially if you're looking to assign the contract over to an end buyer. So an assignment, when this contract is filled out and it is turned into title, Texas recognizes that you have equitable interest in this property particularly. And so with this agreement being assignable, what that means is you can then assign your equitable interest to another party, and that other party then becomes fully responsible for the initial agreement. So that's why it's so important to have this as an assignable agreement. Going into the very first paragraph, agreement to sell and purchase, you've got the property address that goes here on the first line. The second line is going to be the legal description. Then you go here. Basically, this entire clause is saying that the property has to be delivered as is, with every fixture that's associated with it, every piece of equipment. So if it's got window units, if it's got mini splits, whatever. It doesn't include appliances, so they can take like their fridge and all that good stuff, washer, dryer, whatever. But if there's anything fixed to the property, it has to stay with it. So that's essentially what this is covering. It also covers lease agreements as well. So if there's a tenant in place, they have to provide any kind of leases on it as well. Your purchase price is pretty self-explanatory. So this is where you would put the purchase price of the property. Earnest money, you've already got a $50 option fee that goes with it. However, instead of that option fee being or given to the seller, it's actually credited towards the closing cost of the purchase of the property. So it just goes, it's a little $50 credit to the purchase of the property. Your EMD amount, your earnest money is going to go here. Your title, that's pretty much it for the most part for this entire little section. Going down, you've got this here that's actually really important to notate. So this clause basically ensures that all EMD is to be held in an actual escrow account, and none of the funds are to be delivered directly to the seller by any means. So for whatever reason, a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but there are several people out there that want to receive EMD for themselves. Don't ever do it, because if anything goes sideways, the likelihood of you getting that EMD back is very slim to none. That's also why we don't work directly with like New Western, Net Worth, Myers Home Buyers, Easy Street Capital, and so on, because their EMD for the most part goes directly to them, and we're not fans of that by like any means. Your paragraph 3 goes into your option period or your termination period. So in the agreement, as standard, it has 15 days. Again, you've got the Word doc, so you can always edit this to whatever is agreed upon. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the full 15 days. It could be 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, whatever it is that y'all agree on. But essentially what this is it gives you 15 days to do your full due diligence on the property to make sure that this is something you're able to move forward with. And typically, if you're wholesaling this agreement, what you're going to want to do is find an end buyer within that termination period. So you want to find an end buyer within that 15-day time period. If you cannot, then typically, normally, you would want to terminate the contract. But there's another clause in here a little bit later on that kind of gives you a contingency to really terminate this agreement whenever you want to get a full and also get full refund of your EMD as well. And we'll cover that here in a minute. This clause here, basically, this gives us the ability to terminate the agreement at any, oh, that's funny. This is it. It gives us the ability to terminate the agreement at any time for whatever reason during our option period. It also allows us to get a full refund of our EMD. And the reason for it is because there's a particular clause or particular saying, so buyer shall, in its sole discretion, determine whether the property is suitable to buyer. In the event buyer determines the property is not satisfactory for any reason whatsoever or for no reason, in the sole opinion of the buyer, this contract may be canceled at buyer's option by buyer giving written notice of the same to seller on or before the expiration of the termination period. Okay, so this isn't the clause that I'm referring to, but it's going to be further down. But this is basically letting us know, or letting the seller know, like, hey, we have the ability to terminate this agreement within our option period, and there's really nothing you can really do. Now, I will say it is very important. There's a wording in here, right here. Oh, I can't highlight it, darn it. But it says buyer giving written notice of same to seller on or before expiration and termination period. So basically what this means is we have to give the seller a written notice of termination. This is very important. Here's why it's important. We ran into an issue, I want to say last week or either last week or early this week, ran into the issue with an agent. We had to terminate on property in Fort Worth, unfortunately, because there we go. Because it was in the historic district of Fort Worth, and apparently they've got really strict design guidelines. And so because of those restrictions are the way they are, it actually increased the rehab by almost double. And we weren't prepared properly for it. So we had to come back and renegotiate, try to renegotiate at a much lower price. Didn't sit too well with the seller, also didn't sit too well with the agent, but it's a learning lesson. So we unfortunately had to terminate the contract. Well, we got with the agent the day that we found out, that afternoon. We gave her a notice, like a verbal notice of termination. Now in the Trek contract, it doesn't specify what kind of notice it needs to be. It doesn't specify whether it's a verbal notice or if it's a written notice. And so that's kind of the issue that we were running into, because we had a verbal notice with the agent and the seller, and we had a written notice turned into title. Well, we were a little bit behind on getting that notice turned over, or that notice of termination given to the seller's agent and the seller. And so because we were a little bit behind on that, and there's a little bit of delay, the agent tried to fight us on EMD and keep an EMD for her client. And so we got into this whole, I guess, argument about the actual clause in the Trek contract, because it does not say that it needs to be a written or verbal notice. It just says a notice. So that's why it's important to notate here in my agreement is that it is in fact a written notice. You have to provide a written notice of termination to the seller or to the agent, whoever it is that you're working with, notifying them that we are in fact about to terminate this contract, and then also send it to title as well. So words are very important when it comes to legalities. So written notice, just make note of it. And also going to have both your initials and seller's initials, so that way they are fully aware and they cannot say that they did not know, because we just broke it down to them, we explained it to them, and they initial off next to it. Now, time and place of settlement. What is settlement? Settlement is closing. It's just another fancy way to say closing. So time and place of closing. So closing shall take place on or before X, sooner by mutual agreement between the parties. Settlement shall occur within Texas, yada, yada, yada. So basically, this is your closing date. This is where you would put closing. And again, you can always amend the closing date if title clears sooner and the contract's already assigned. And both parties, both the seller and the buyer, are on the same page and want to close at a sooner date, you can always amend it and do that as well. So paragraph 5, don't judge me. I can never properly pronounce this word. I'm not the strongest at pronunciation sometimes, and I'm also not the strongest speller. It's pretty bad, actually. So I'm not even going to attempt it. Something and adjustments. Okay. Here's what's important. This entire clause is basically letting the seller know what it is that we're actually prepared to pay for. So when we tell our prospects, like, hey, we'll pay for all the traditional closing costs except any owed taxes or any liens on the property, that is what this clause covers. That's it. That's the easiest way to simplify this clause. It's just letting the seller know, or the prospect know, like, hey, this is what we're paying for. And in a nutshell, it's basically all the traditional closing costs. The only thing we are not held responsible for is any owed taxes or liens, which is actually going to be pointed out here in the first paragraph. So all real estate taxes, general, special, shall be adjusted, yada, yada, yada. All encumbrances for liens, water, and sewer charges completed, yada, 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 shall be the responsibility of the seller and shall not be assumed by the buyer. Everything else is to be assumed by the buyer. So in a nutshell, we cover all traditional closing costs except for any owed taxes or liens on the property. Okay. Going into paragraph 6. So paragraph 6 is basically stating, hey, John, if anything happens to this property, God forbid a tornado came through and destroyed it, we have the ability to either renegotiate a lower purchase price, or we can back out of it and terminate the agreement with the full refund of our EMD. That's pretty much what paragraph 6 says. So if there's any loss or if there's any damage or destruction that has occurred to the property, this gives us an ability or gives us a contingency to terminate this agreement and get a full refund of our EMD. So that's essentially what this covers here. KKK. All right. Settlements. Basically, this is everything that's expected to be delivered during closing. All the docs and what each party should be delivering, basically stating that the seller is expected to deliver a free and clear title. Now, in the event that the seller is unable to deliver a free and clear title, this gives us the contingency to also terminate the agreement and get a full refund of our EMD. So it literally says the contract shall become null and void and all deposits hereunder shall be returned immediately to buyer. This is if we choose to terminate the agreement because they cannot provide us a free and clear title. So for example, if there's, I've seen it happen one time where there's been 19 affidavits of airships. An affidavit airship is basically heirs to the owners of the property. Their kids. This guy had 19 kids. It was ridiculous. And one of the kids didn't want to sign. So that gives us the ability to terminate this agreement because that one kid didn't want to sign. That prevents the entire sale from moving forward. So in a case like that, which is very rare, but it does happen, this protects us and gives us something to get out of it. So give me one sec. Cool. There we go. Let's go back to it. All right. So that's essentially what this is saying here. This is covering, again, all leases, any kind of agreements, if they've got tenants in place month to month, if there are security deposits that were given, anything like that is going to be assumed by the buyer and is to be delivered to the buyer from the seller. So that's essentially what this is saying here. Possession in as is condition of the property. This is letting the seller know, like, hey, we're fully aware that we're buying this property as is. Now, here's a really big misconception. For whatever reason, sellers have the idea because we're buying the property as is, that also means everything included in the property, such as like junk, right? So if it's a hoarder house, we come across this often, they typically want to leave all their stuff behind because we're buying the property as is. I've ran into it with an agent, or I've gotten into it with an agent before because that was their expectation. And it's like, no. I wouldn't be opposed to picking up a property that has a bunch of personal items in it, as long as we are able to come down on the price. And so that way we basically budget for a bigger rehab because we're going to need more expenses to cover the items in the property. Even junk cars. A lot of people like to leave junk cars. So same thing there. But it's just letting the seller or the prospect know that, hey, we're buying this property as is. Notices. This is basically going over any kind of notice. So like a notice of termination, amendments, addendums, anything like that. All notices need to be presented to the other party, either through email. You can send it through mail, whatever. You just need to notify the other party of any changes that are going to be done to the original agreement. Here, this little box is where the seller's printed name is going to go along with their email. So that way we have a destination to send the notices. And it also helps title keep them in the loop as well. Now, paragraph 10 is probably one of my favorites. It's a breach of contract and default. So basically it's telling us the ramifications and the ramifications of each party if either or were to fall in default or fall into, I said that right, fall into default. So if the buyer fails to make, or if the buyer fails to close, the only thing that happens is EMD is forfeited to the seller. If the seller fails to close and they fall in default, well, the only thing that happens is we get full EMD. That's it. There's nothing else that can really happen according to this contract. I'm not a big firm believer in suing somebody to sell me their house, because if you come down to that level, if you're really in that position, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Just putting that out there. Because if a seller gets seller remorse at the very end of an agreement, and when it comes down to the closing overall and they just get cold feet and leave, that's your fault, 100%. And the reason for it is because somewhere along the way in the initial agreement, that initial appointment you had with the seller, you didn't do enough digging. You didn't create enough of an emotional gap from where they are to where they want to be. And because you failed to do that as the investor, as the negotiator, as the closer, you didn't uncover enough motivation or create enough urgency in their own mind. So because of that, a lot of times what happens is sellers will get cold feet. And is that their fault? Not necessarily. It's really not. It's more so your fault, and it's kind of your problem. So not a big firm believer in all that. Also not a big firm believer in doing memos. We've done memos and we've clouded title before, but it's just a really kind of irky kind of feeling. So always want to do right by whoever it is that you work with. Integrity goes a really long ways, and so does having really good relationships. And if you cloud somebody's house and you put a memo on it, you are actually kind of hindering their own livelihood in a way, and that's not okay. So not a big fan of it. That's why I have it set up this way. So that way, none of that can take place. You either get your EMD, you forfeit your EMD, or you just go your separate ways. Simple. Miscellaneous. Okay. So this first paragraph here, I like quite a bit because it gives us the ability to potentially market the property on the MLS, which opens up a doorway to us essentially being able to do an novation. If we're going to do a novation, the only other document that we really need, because this is an authorization, the seller agrees to this, the only document we really need to do a novation is going to be an attorney of fact, and that's it. So I really like this clause for that reason, particularly because if all else fails, if we're not getting any traction by any of our buyers or any of our partners, then it gives us this ability as a last resort to list the property on the MLS to stir up as much interest as possible, getting more eyes on. And that is a really, really big help, especially in rural areas. So that's one big reason I love this clause here. And again, going back to what I had mentioned earlier on when we first started going into this contract, this clause again makes this contract fully assignable. So even if this little and or assigns was not here, this contract is still fully assignable just because of that one little statement. Now, this is the contingency that I was talking about when it came to the termination period. So this is essentially another way for us to pretty much kind of terminate the agreement and get a full refund of EMD. So the seller shall allow us to have full access to the property throughout the entire duration of the process, as long as it's reasonable. So you can't just be going whenever you want to. Now, like, get with the seller, do it at reasonable times. But it allows you to do and run as many inspections as you want on the house. Okay. And so it doesn't really specify what type of inspections, but any other inspections buyer deems necessary. So that kind of covers a vast variety of things, really. Now, the clause in here in this particular paragraph that is really important is going to be, in the event buyer determines to terminate contract as a result of any of these inspections, sellers shall promptly refund buyer's deposit, and neither party shall have any further obligation to each other. That one clause gives us a contingency to terminate this agreement for whatever reason, even if we're outside of our inspection period. If we're outside of our option period, and it's past the 15 days, and we have a foundation specialist go out there, level the foundation, and it's a little bit worse than we had anticipated or wanted then we can terminate this agreement for that reason. So that's another clause in here as well. And then that is pretty much it. So other provisions, that is basically special provisions. So that's any other known fact that is agreed upon on this contract. So if there's a lease back that needs to be put in place, that would be put in here. If you are offering to help with any kind of moving expenses, or if you're offering to help with hiring movers to help pack, anything like that, that would also be put in other provisions. Anything that is agreed to that is not covered in this purchase and sell agreement will be put into other provisions. So that's essentially what goes here. It's agreed upon facts. So this is where everybody signs. I need to adjust this to where this comes up because it looks really weird. But seller signs here, you sign here, everybody initials. And that is pretty much it for this document. Here is pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy, pretty self-explanatory. I won't say self-explanatory, but it's pretty straightforward stuff. Now, before we start diving into the joint venture agreement, does anybody have any questions?
I got a question, Darion.
Shoot.
Hey, so what about for back to the assignment question? You're gonna wholesale it now. I guess in Texas we gotta let them know we're gonna be assigning it. Is that a clause you add in there, or is that gonna be like an addendum? How do you go about that?
You can add that into the special provisions. So you can add a clause in you can put anything in special provision. So you can put something in there that says seller fully understands that how would I word it? Seller fully understands that this agreement is assignable and this buyer may transfer their equitable interest to another buyer. Something along those. I would definitely fine tune that a lot better, but something along those lines. And then you can have them initial next to that clause in special provisions, and that would be a disclosure.
Cool.
Yep. Good question. Good question. Steve, what's up, brother?
Hey, man, on that inspection part at the end, when it says you can cancel based on anything, does that mean EMD comes back too?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're talking about the clause at the very, very bottom?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So any time you terminate that agreement for those reasons or for that reason particularly, all EMD is going to be refunded.
Cool.
Good question. Good question. Anybody else? Rhonda, any questions? Good to go. Chris, any questions, bro? Solid. Cool. All right, let's dive into the joint venture agreement. If you guys thought that was simple, then I think y'all are gonna love this JV agreement because it is like cut and dry. All right, let's go to it. All right, and JV and open. Okay, can everybody see it? Perfect. There we go.
Yes, we see.
Excellent. So JV agreement, super simple. Your address of the property is going to go here. Legal description will go here. This is the only clause that you really have to worry about. Okay. This is the only clause that you're going to change. You're going to edit any kind of way. So the way that this clause is set up right now is if you are adding a fee on top of the let's say party A is like the wholesaler who's got the property. Party B is the wholesaler who's helping with the disposition. Well, party A wants to make a $10,000 assignment and doesn't want party B to cut into that assignment. And they also don't want to split it. So, for example, this fee will be calculated as the difference between party A's specified asking price at $975 and the final assignment price achieved by party B. So for example, if party B is able to bring a buyer in at $990, then that, what is that, $15,000 difference is going to be kept for party B, and party A will keep their $10,000 assignment. So party B in this case essentially is just adding their fee on top of what party A is asking for already. So that's how this is currently set up. However, you can adjust as needed based on how the original joint venture agreement was negotiated and agreed to. So for example, if you were to do any kind of 50-50 splits, if you were to do any kind of 30-40 splits, or 30-70, 60-40, whatever it is, whatever kind of splits you want to do, you can adjust it to where it needs, or it basically states that. So it's pretty simple, nothing too easy. It's like a bologna sandwich. Yeah, pretty easy stuff. So not too crazy. And that's literally it. So nothing fancy here, but it works. It works really well. Okay. All right. Any questions on that one? Okay, cool. Those are the two contracts that that I've gotten written up for pretty much any kind of direct to seller deal that I do, and also joint venture agreements that I do as well. And now you guys have it. You'll have the breakdowns and explanations of each paragraph. And again, you can always come back, reference this video as well, because it is recorded and uploaded to YouTube. So y'all are always going to have this. And it's in the chat. You've got both the Word doc and the PDF, but if for whatever reason you are unable to get it, just let me know and I'll send it directly to you. So that way everybody here has it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the most part. But if y'all need anything else like that, just let me know. If you have any more questions about it, just let me know. But for the most part, it's pretty cut and dry. And I think we hit the nail on the head with every paragraph. Any feedback, any thoughts, questions, concerns?
It's another good video, man. That contract is good, easy, and the explanation was great. Appreciate it.
Sweet, brother. Too easy, man. Too easy, too easy. Chris, love it, man. Thank you for the thumbs up. Rhonda, what do you think? How was it?
For someone who is extremely new at all of this, it's great to just hear and just learn different terminologies and just listen to other people talk and ask questions. So it's helping me learn also. And gratefully, I can go back and I'll look at the video if I have other questions too, and I can always reach out to you. So that's awesome.
Love it, love it, I love it. And here's the thing too. So anytime I present, because I think this is also really important to touch on as well. Anytime I present this agreement to a seller, especially when I'm doing my seller appointments, and we're wrapping up the day, and after talking with them and really figuring out that this is something that's in their best interest and it makes sense for them to move forward on, and it's something that they do want to move forward with, the way I present it is very simple. I'll show them the agreement and I'll let them know, like, typically, people want to do this in one of three different ways. They either want a quick synopsis of the entire thing, they want a quick rundown of each paragraph, or they just want to go over the entire thing word by word. How do you feel would be best for you? And let them tell you. And vast majority of the times I'll have individuals tell me, well, let's do a quick rundown of each paragraph. So with the agreement broken down paragraph by paragraph, it's going to not only help you better understand this agreement, but it's also going to help you better understand or better explain what this agreement entails to your prospect. And what is that going to do? It's going to make you sound a lot more credible. It's going to make you sound like you know what you're doing. It's going to make, and when you present it, you're going to be confident because you're familiar with the clauses. So I think that's also going to be really, really beneficial as well. I don't think I've ever had anything broken down that way for me. So when I first started off and I was trying to explain how to utilize or use like PSAs, it was awful. It was so bad. But over time you get better, right? Because you become more familiar with it. So it really works out at the end of the day. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I can't think of anything else to really cover on it. But typically when you're negotiating your option period, your EMD amount. Oh, that's weird. Okay. Very interesting. How did that happen? I don't know, that's weird. But typically when you're negotiating like your option period or your EMD amount or anything like that of particular sorts, a lot of this stuff in here really is negotiable. So like at the end of the day, do you need a 15-day option period? Probably not. You can get away with the 1-day option period for the most part because you've got so many contingencies in this agreement to be able to back out and still receive full EMD. And at the end of the day, let's say, shit were to hit the fan, they can't take you to court, and vice versa. You can't take them to court. So you have to part ways. Like you have to part ways, and there's no other party could be held or be obligated for the actual performance on their end at the end of the day. And that was one of the clauses that we went over, just to make sure, one, worst case scenario, you get full EMD back or you lose EMD and that's it. But worst case scenario for the seller, they just walk away. So can't cloud their title, can't do any of that, take legal action, no suing, none of that. Because let's be real, if you got to do that, it's pretty bad, right? A pretty bad spot. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the most part. Nothing too crazy. I don't really think I have anything else on this one. Again, it is editable. Damn it. It's not, you can't eat it. You can edit it. You can edit it. Edit. You can edit the document. That's what you can do. Don't eat it. Now, when you do, all I ask is for one thing. Just remove my logo and remove my company information. Put your logo and put your company information on there as well. That's it. Just replace my stuff with your stuff. Now, if you have an entity or you have an LLC, perfect. If you don't have an LLC, there's two things that I would recommend doing. One, I would not recommend doing or getting a property under contract using your personal name. Would not recommend doing that, no matter what. Secondly, if you do not have an LLC and you want to get your first deal knocked out of the way, let me know. We can work on it together. We'll use my entity, LLC, or the company that I'm with. We can do that and knock it out together. So that way, at the end of the day, you're still protected no matter what. But definitely don't want to use your own personal name for sure. So want to make sure you guys are actually taken care of and this is being done the right way. Anybody have any questions on that? Cool. And then as far as joint ventures with go, if you're wanting to do your first deal, knock your first deal out of the way as well. The joint venture splits that we typically do, and the reason I'm bringing this up is James. I don't know if he's in the call or not. I can't tell. But James had brought up a really great question about JVs, and since we're on this and James's questions, I also want to tackle this as well because it's very true. So when it comes to JV splits, if you're negotiating with the seller, but I'm writing up the contract, we're putting up our EMD, and we're doing the dispositions of the prospect or dispositions of the property, then typically what our splits are going to look like is either going to be, it'll either be 65-35 or it'll be 70-30. It just depends on the overall, what we can get out of the assignment. But no matter what, regardless of the situation, like you guys are still going to be getting paid really nicely. We're not greedy, and we definitely want to create a really strong relationship with everyone. And so by doing that, I think that'd be a really, really good starting part. Yeah, I'd say so. So instead of like 10% or 15%, you're getting a little bit more. So it's nice. But aside from that, if we're doing, let's say you do the acquisitions, you write up the contract and you put EMD down and all we're doing is dispo, then we could do like 60-40 or even 50-50. So the more work that's put in on your side, the bigger the split is going to be, if that makes any sense. So it's pretty much just broken down as to how much work is being put in at the end of the day. And then expectations. This is a really good one. So I'm pretty sure a lot of us here have been told, and we're under the expectations by a lot of different leaders in this industry or gurus that, you know, you can get a deal done within the first 30 days. It is doable, but it's also like a unicorn. It's very rare. Very rarely will it happen. So I want to make sure that I manage everybody's expectations accordingly. It took me 6 months to get my first deal closed. I had multiple deals in a contract, but it took 6 months to where I figured out, or it took me 2 weeks to get my first property under contract, but it didn't close. So it actually took 6 months for the first one to close. So understand that when you're going into this industry, it may take some time. It is not going to be cut and paste and super simple or super fast like all these gurus pointed out to be. Because at the end of the day, all they're trying to do is sell you a damn course. That's all they're doing. So they're going to flash as much as they can. They're going to get you as excited as possible because they're increasing your emotional state to buy that or not that property, but to buy their course. But it's just very unrealistic. And I feel like a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot coming into this industry with that expectation. So even with a good coach, even with a good mentor that's hand-holding you throughout the process, it can still take a little bit of time because you never know what's going to pop up on the property. The property could be clouded. There could be multiple affidavit of airships. There could be all kinds of different liens. It may take some time for it to actually clear title. So just have that understanding, like this is something that does take a little bit of time, but it does pay off and does have really high rewards. So that's the last expectation I want to, I guess, leave you guys with. So that way it's managed accordingly and appropriately. Does anybody have questions on that? Cool. Everybody on the same page for it? Perfect. Sweet. All right. Well, I do not have anything else for you guys. So if y'all are all good, all set, don't have any questions or anything like that, we'll go ahead and knock this one out of the park for the day. And then I'm going to go ahead and hop into the next call. So if everybody's good, I will see you on the next one. Cool. All right. Later, y'all.